Is the Brantford real estate market about to slow down, or are we on the edge of a major rebound? I've got the latest data for October 2024, and it's full of insights that will help you make sense of what's happening. Stay tuned, because after we break down the numbers, I'm going to be giving specific advice for buyers, sellers, and investors on how to win in this market over the next 6 months. Thanks for joining me. I'm Thibodeau, a real estate broker here in Brantford with over 15 years experience. If staying on top of the Brantford real estate market is your goal, well, you're in the right place. Every day I track and analyze Brantford's real estate trends, not just for my clients, but also because I'm a property owner and investor myself right here in Brantford. Today, I'm diving into the residential sales numbers with the most recent data right up until October 2024. If you are planning a move, knowing what's happening in the market right now is key. Here are 3 ways that I can help you stay informed. First, you can request a custom report on your home and neighborhood. This isn't just some automated tool. We actually create a detailed tailored report just for you. It's free, so if you're interested, just hit pause right now and click the first link in the video description. Second, you can join my mailing list for quick, valuable updates on the Brantford real estate market and any standout purchase or investment opportunities that I see. And third, if you'd rather just have a conversation about your situation, you can feel free to reach out to me anytime. Links for my cell phone, email, and to book directly into my calendar are all in the video description below. Okay, let's jump in and take a look at the slides that I prepared for us this week. Well, the first most interesting piece of data is the median sale price. This is the median or the midpoint of all the homes that sold in the previous month. And last month it came in at $620,000. I'm running this chart all the way back to January of 2020, so we can take a look at some of the interesting things that have been happening in the market. The biggest thing that I see is as we look back to the previous market low point after the rapid interest rate hiking cycle, we saw prices slide down to a median price of $560,000 from a previous high point of $795,000. That was quite a dramatic year where both buyers, sellers, and investors were very confused and very cautious. Since then, we saw the price rebound from that low of $560,000 up to almost $700,000 in the spring market of 2023. Following a couple more interest rate adjustments by the Bank of Canada, prices came back a little bit and have since again rebounded. The most interesting thing I think you can see on this chart is if we see that last peak and valley there really as an overhyping of the market followed by a correction, I've added this white bar to show you that there is quite a bit of price stability in the market right now. We've been hanging around this median sale price of $600,000 for almost all of this year, pretty much all of last year, and even a big chunk of 2021. So if you take out the wild swing that we experienced basically through the 2022 market, you'll see that the price of a home in Brantford basically has remained unchanged over the last few years. Now, that really takes us to a point of, if you are a homeowner here, looking back at when you purchased your home will really determine how much growth or equity you're sitting on. If you only bought your home a year ago today, it actually could be slightly down in value. The market's a little depressed right now compared to where it was a year ago. But if we look back 2 years, you would actually already be up by 6% on the price of your home. And if we look back 3 years, that actually puts us into that heated market. So you'd be taking a loss after 3 years right now. But interestingly is once we step back at least 4 years, you can see that your collective growth over that time, you're up 26.5%. And that's really the story of the market, is that if we can take it back, 4+ years, everybody who's purchased at that time is really sitting still on a significant amount of equity. And the last 3 years have been quite an emotional and financial roller coaster. Maybe flipping back quickly to the median sale price, I think what we can expect to see next is this price to wobble around a little bit more for the fall and winter, as people who really had to get their homes sold this year, potentially offer it for a discount, and other buyers and sellers maybe wait till spring. We could see it be kind of a slower, tougher couple months ahead of us. But with the interest rates coming down by the Bank of Canada, and also that trickling into over on the fixed lending rates like a 5-year fixed or a 3-year fixed, we're also seeing them come down. We can be assured that coming into the spring market, we're going to see an increase in demand, and that should be pushing prices back up early next year and throughout the 2025 and into the 2026 season. These just aren't my words. They're also coming out of bank analysts, and also the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation put out a report with all these similar predictions based on the economy coming back, the interest rates going back down, and also no long-term correction has been made to the supply and demand imbalance in our cities. So watch for all that developing over the next few months. The next chart we really like to look at to understand the market is the overall demand for homes. And this is just a count of the absolute number of homes that are sold each month here in our marketplace. And this first chart I'm showing you is just kind of the last 12 months of data. And you can see that, we had about a similar September as we had last year, both of them coming in around that 100 level. This year we had our peak demand back in April, and it's been quieting down ever since. And this is a very normal seasonal effect that we can expect for demand to continue to drop month after month as we head into the winter. Usually we experience our lowest demand over December and January, and then the market starts to wake back up in February. Actually, if I zoom out, this is a multi-year chart now going back 5 years, just to show you this demand seasonality is pretty predictable in our marketplace. So each of these bars is a month, and you can see that those demand bars peak in the spring market, and some years we get a little extra bump in the fall market before we hit our low point in the winter. And so we would expect that pattern continues this year. There's no reason to think this is going to be an abnormal fall or winter. And really how the inventory levels and how the demand plays out over the winter season is really going to predict how things play out in the spring, when affordability should be a little stronger for the average buyer. Now, overall demand has been the big story of the year. Here, I'm looking at every year comparing January all the way through September. And you can see for this year, we've so far had 1,038 homes sell. And, that number on its own, it could seem large, it could seem small, but what we've done here is compare it. And what you can see by running this dotted line backwards is it's actually our lowest demand year in the past decade. And that actually doesn't make much sense, right? Because Brantford is actually bigger and growing, and there's new stuff happening, and there's a lot of exciting things happening in Brantford. It doesn't make sense that the demand is lower. It would make sense if you had a community that lost thousands of jobs, or that people were trying to get out of that city or out of that province. But Brantford is the opposite. Brantford is a growing community population-wise. So what we're seeing here is the demand for homes has been suppressed by the tough lending conditions of the last couple of years. And I think what we are really expecting is that there is some pent-up demand. And in fact, I can say, based on my on-the-ground experience, just this past weekend, was holding an open house at a property that had already been on the market for a few weeks, and it was unseasonably busy. Like, we were back to back to back with people all weekend. And as I spoke to them, I realized many of them were in the very early research phase. They weren't, ready to make offers. Some of them, this was their first Sunday going out to check out properties. And that's usually what we see happen when people are, coming up off the sidelines. Maybe they put their plans on pause for a year or two. And now we're starting to see, because of the good news headlines, because of interest rates coming down, a lot of buyers are starting to reconsider their plans. Now, we'll have to wait and see whether those buyers start pulling the trigger and making offers this season, or people are really just getting ramped up expecting, to do a transaction early next year. The next most important number to track to understand our real estate market really is the inventory level. And this shows us the number of homes for sale each month looking back over the last 4 years. And you can see I've labeled the peaks of each of the previous years. And you can see again the same pattern where we hit a high point in the inventory, usually in spring, that hangs on through the bulk of the selling season. And then the inventory lowers again into the winter as people take their homes off the market if they're unsuccessful, and fewer people put their home up for sale in the winter. But what you can see here is the inventory peak levels and the low levels have both been increasing to new high levels since our 2021 year. And here as we sit in 2024, actually, if I zoom this chart out and go back over a decade, you can see that we're sitting around fall of 2014 inventory levels. So there literally hasn't been this many homes for sale in Brantford in over a decade. And it's crazy because I still hear a lot of buyers complaining that there's not enough choice, or there's not enough good properties for sale, when in fact, you'd have to go back more than 10 years to go to a point where you had more available choice. And I think what people are really saying is that they still feel that homes aren't affordable, which makes total sense because the absolute level of the pricing really hasn't come back that much from where it was. But what's changed is the borrowing costs. And especially if it's your first home that you're trying to buy, it can feel really hard to get into the market and get approved for a mortgage. So I understand the difference between saying absolutely there's so many homes for sale while buyers still feel like it's very tough to get into the market. Now, speaking of all this, let's take a look at the interest rates. Here I'm pulling up some historical interest rate charts because it's important to understand what's going on here and what's about to happen next. The thing is, we can really, clearly predict which direction things are going, but we can't always predict the speed that they're going in that direction. But you can definitely see on the chart here, this is the variable rate mortgage. And what we've seen is this last part of the chart, the right-hand side. That's what everyone's felt, is the Bank of Canada ramping up that interest rate. And just recently, you can see on the far side of this chart, it's come down. Now it's come down 3 times, 0.25 each time. So a collective decrease of 0.75. So not even a full percent yet. But there is news, and we'll get to this in a minute, that those decreases will probably continue and may even increase in speed. And the next one's coming up end of October. We'll know for sure kind of the speed at which the Bank of Canada is either hanging on to this 0.25 decrease plan, or they may increase it to a 0.5 decrease plan. Now, that's got to trickle over into the fixed rates, because the fixed rates operate a little bit differently than the variable rates. The variable rates are kind of set by the Bank of Canada. The fixed rates are set by the banks, competitive against other investment products like bonds. And so you see here too, that the same thing, they do run together though, not identical, but when variable rates go up, so do fixed rates, and vice versa. So we saw them, spike from a point where they were, you could get a mortgage, sub 2% in the middle of the pandemic. And then they were getting as high as like 5.5%. Now we're seeing, a competitive fixed rate mortgage, 5-year fixed rate coming in just over 4%. I think you start to see some really interesting things happen on the demand side when that rate starts with a 3 in it, whether that's 3.9, 3.8, 3.7 as it goes down. And if that rate returns back to the point where it starts with a 2 for the average person, applying for a mortgage, it really just makes borrowing a lot more feasible for the average person making the average income. So this is really one of the charts I'm watching and trying to check on those forward predictions. But I promise you, if we see fixed rates, that is 5-year fixed rates, drop into the 3s, it's going to have a very positive stimulus effect to the market. And if they eventually do get down into the 2s, you could see conditions returning in that heated bidding war kind of cycle that we experienced during the pandemic. Now, the Bank of Canada obviously has a very set schedule, and we've got another decision coming up on October 23rd, followed by one on December 11th, and that'll be it for this year. But then there will be one January 29th. So we actually have 3 more Bank of Canada decisions really before the next spring market is here. And I think when you add up the 3 rate cuts that have already happened, plus the next 3 decisions, and realize, the market we had in 2024 versus the market we're going to have in 2025, the borrowing environment is going to be much different between those 2 years. So when you realize that, that should bring more demand back into the market and make buyers more able to go out and make that offer. So just quickly flipping back to compare the overall inventory levels with the overall demand, it's important to understand that when these 2 variables are moving away from each other, that's what gets us this systematic slowing down of the real estate market. So not only has the inventory been rising every year, but also the demand has been lower consecutively over a year, especially over the last 3 years. So we've seen quite a dramatic shift, and you can see it here visually on the 2021 bar, where the red demand line is actually taller than the active inventory. That means the inventory was turning over faster than 1 month. There was actually more homes selling every single month than there were even available at any given time in a month. If you've ever run a factory or worked an assembly line, you realize that having the turnover rate that fast really just, it makes for a wild environment. And we lived through that. Now you can see how much taller the gray bars are than the red line, and that poses some challenges for people trying to get their homes sold in this market. And when we divide these two numbers together, what we get is the month supply. And I want to slow down here a little bit and talk about this because it is my favorite statistic, and it's one that I think, the average consumer should really understand. So the month supply is a mathematical division of the total inventory number divided by the demand number. And so it gives you this nice singular, number to track. And we think about it as the month supply really means how many times more homes are for sale than are selling. So if the month supply is 3, that means that there would be, say, 300 homes up on the market and only 100 selling. There's 3 months supply of homes. And here, when I translate the inventory and the demand into the month supply, you can see that throughout that 2021 market, it was like below 1, which is nuts. And then we see it rise up to about 2, then rise up to a peak of around 3, and now rising up to a peak of 4. So it's kind of increasing by 1 every year. Do I think we rise to 5? No. Actually, I think we're hitting peak levels. Maybe it rises a little bit more in the fall as people hang on and try to get their homes sold. But really, I think this is going to be the peak amount of inventory we're going to see on the market as more buyers return to the marketplace over this next 6 months and definitely next spring. So that'll be interesting because as that number turns over, it really means the market starts to speed back up again. And so if we think like this is the most buyer's market we're going to experience, and it's probably going to start shifting back towards where we've been, which is a little more, favoring the sellers with low inventory in a fast-paced, quick-moving market. Now, this isn't the whole story, though, and I'm going to make some additional videos this month to break this down, but I want to show you some of the things I go through to really understand the different market segments. And this first one is really breaking apart that month's supply based on this type of home, because our main styles of home here, obviously we have single family detached. That's the bulk of the Brantford marketplace. And then you have, the growing sectors of townhomes and also condos. And you can see that the single family homes are still, the hottest segment of the market comparatively. And it's a little bit slower trying to sell a townhome, and it's much slower trying to sell a condo. And the big thing with the condo market is those condo fees. Many of the condos are being marketed and sold towards, entry-level buyers, first-time home buyers. But the challenge there is that condo fee cuts right into their affordability. That condo fee goes on their mortgage pre-approval application and comes right off what they would be able to borrow on a monthly payment. So it actually makes condos currently, pretty unaffordable for the average first-time home buyer. And that's why you see this slowdown. There's also, a bunch of condo projects in Brantford that completed over the slow market, and you've got some investors who bought those units, hoping to exit them, and they haven't been able to. So you have some inventory building up. Another way I like to break the data apart is really looking at the different price ranges, because, Brantford is a working class town. It's slowly becoming more of a commuter town, but we definitely, aren't, the center of wealth in Southern Ontario. It's Brantford. It's a working class community. And you can see that when I break apart the price ranges, homes priced 600 grand and under, even, 800 grand and under, you can see that their month supply lines are still same, pretty moderate. They're, kind of between 2 and 3. That's still a pretty strong market. It's where we're seeing the spikes is in the higher price homes. And you can see how the gray line, that's homes, 800 to $1 million. It started to take off, meaning it's slowing down. There's lots more homes for sale. There's lots less buyers. And look at that white line of $1 million plus homes. It's really ice cold. Like we're sitting now at 12, 13 months supply, which means, if one home is going to sell, there's going to be 13 on the market. That means 12 of them aren't going to sell in that given month. So those are tough conditions for the average home seller, and you need a really special approach if you're going to get the job done. I also like to break down the actual sales that happened. So that's what you see here. These are the red dots. Every one of these red dots represents a sold house. And what we have here is the time on market up the vertical axis and the price. And you can see a lot by just looking at this chart. The main thing I've done here is I've split and I've put a bar at 30 and a bar at 60. And I want you to see that I've counted up the dots. You can't do this on the screen, but I went through the data and did it. And you have 45% of all the sales are still happening when the house is 30 days or less on the market, right? And then an additional 25% when the home's 60 days to 30 days on the market. So add those together and you've actually got 70% of all the sales are happening when the home is under 2 months on the market, and only 30% of homes selling kind of after 60 days. So for me, this makes it really important for sellers to make sure they get the job done right the first time. So you want to go to market with a very, exciting, well thought out strategy, because you get the most attention on your home during the first 30 days, maybe during the next 30 days, and then it starts to get pretty quiet. So we want to really, what I say is do it right the first time. As a buyer, this tells me that you're either going to be down here competing with the fresh new listings. So you got to treat those like gold. You got to get out and see them right away. And if you like them, you have to offer on them. Or you can be waiting around to try to look at stuff that maybe other people have overlooked, or maybe something that's just, come across a price correction. And speaking of that, that same data, but instead of looking at the time on the market, I'm looking at the strength of the offer price. And here again, I've put a line at 100%, or actually put it at 99.9, and I put another line at 95. And the thing I'd like to see here, or try to explain to my clients when I'm working with them, is that you see we've got 50% of all the sales are happening between 95 and 99.9%, right? And so that's the majority. That's where the chunk of the market is kind of getting nothing to 5% off. And we could get in there and break that down a little bit, but it's important to understand that's the bulk of the market. Then the second biggest chunk is actually homes getting full price or better. That's 39% of the market. So the headlines might say the housing market's slowing down, or, prices are dropping, but we still see that 40% of the homes are still getting over asking offers, or at least full price and over asking. And then only 11% of homes are selling at more than a 5% discount. And this is the big one I like to point out to people, because a lot of people might think the headlines and whatever, you might be able to go out and, people are just desperate and giving away their homes, but that's not really what we're seeing out there on the market. I think that what you see is, there could be homes that are slightly a little bit overpriced and then negotiate down. And you've got other people that, really need to get their home sold quickly, so they sell it for a little bit less than it's worth. But you're not really seeing, people just giving away a property out there, because the truth is there is so many buyers still that if you price a home properly, a buyer is going to show up and take it. You don't need to offer a super discount on a piece of property to get it sold. We just need to put a fair price on it today. Now, of course, that all applies much more when we're looking at under $1 million, under $800,000. Obviously, as we get up in the higher price points, we got to be a lot more careful. You see a lot less red dots, in total on there. So we need a much better strategy. Okay, so to wrap this video up, it's been a long one, but I've got a little bit of advice for you. If you are a buyer, right, the window is wide open to get into the real estate market right now. I completely understand that qualifying for a mortgage is tough, and I can't do anything to help you with that, right? But what I want you to do is keep the lines of communication open with your mortgage broker, because every time the rates go down, your affordability improves. And that's the path we are on right now. So at some point, if your affordability isn't working right now, at some point, probably over the next 6 months, that might open up for you and you can get out there and get into the housing market. Now, if you can afford it, I think you should be out there shopping right now, because with rates coming down, with the market speeding back up, we are probably in that pricing trough in which prices will go up in the future. So it would be a good time to hop into the housing market if you can afford, if you can qualify. Same thing goes with the higher end market. If you're coming from out of town, if you cashed in on a more expensive city and you're bringing that money to Brantford, if you're shopping above 800, especially above $1 million, it is a buyer's market right now, and you can get an incredible home. Hey, for my people here in Brantford, if you do have a home that would sell under $800,000 and you're ready to move up to your forever home or your trophy home, this is the window to do that too. We can sell your home in a fast moving market, and you can buy your next home in a slower market. The market doesn't always offer that opportunity to be a seller in a seller's market and a buyer in a buyer's market, but that's great. And for investors, I think there's a big opportunity right now too. Investors have been pretty cautious over the last couple of years just because borrowing costs have been much higher, but rents are at all-time highs, vacancy all-time lows here in Brantford. And there are investors still having trouble unloading their properties because the pool of investor buyers hasn't quite woken up yet. So if you can beat some other investors, back to the market and pick up something now, I think there's an opportunity to get a great deal. The key to making smart decisions in real estate is staying ahead of the curve. So whether you're looking to buy, sell, or simply stay informed, remember that anytime you like, you can request a detailed, customized report on your home and neighborhood. All you have to do is click the link below, fill out a couple fields, and it hits my inbox. Also, you can sign up for my regular email updates to get the latest market information directly in your inbox. And of course, if you want to have a conversation specifically about your situation, I'd love if you reached out. All of my direct contact information is right in the video description below. Thanks for sticking around all the way to the end of the video. The big takeaway from today's data is that we're seeing distinct market segments moving in very different directions. Affordable homes are moving fast, while higher-end properties and condos are seeing a slowdown. But if you dig deeper than the headlines, there are always good opportunities out there for those who understand the market. Thanks so much for watching, and if you found this video helpful, please take a second to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss my future updates. And if you're ready to learn more, I've got another video lined up for you right here. You can go and check that out now. See you on the next one.